Hi, welcome to Solid Rock Christian Assembly. You're going to hear a message today from a man that is after God's own heart. And so I invite you to open your hearts and to hear from the Word of God and from the man of God.
Solid Rock welcomes you.
Today I'd like to just use as a subject, it's not an exhaustive presentation on the subject itself, but this, oh Lord, why? Lord, why? Pretty much compressing what Gideon said. If the Lord be with us, then why this? Why this? As a pastor, you've lived long enough, 27 years now, and you've heard that question or that word that is also a letter. Why? 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 I'd like to begin with this thought, and you've heard it before. God is sovereign. God is wise. And God is loving. What do we mean by that? Well, for sovereign, we mean that he is just simply too sovereign to lose control. And that's so important to remember. Another thing about God we said is that he is wise. He's so wise that he's unable to make a mistake. I know some of us, as we bring God before the judgment seat, we can declare so many mistakes when it comes to God. But I say to you today, God has never made a mistake. The next thing about God is that God is just all too loving. God is too loving to be unkind. And as I'm saying this right now, there are individuals who are wrestling in their own spirit, whether here or online, with these statements. God is sovereign, too sovereign to lose control, too wise to make a mistake, too loving to be unkind. From our Christian experiences and from the Bible, it is easy for us to conclude that God does, for the most part, take care of his own. And I say to you today, because we've lost the art of getting up and starting to cry out as God would lead people to our spirit. And you know, God doesn't even lead people so much to our spirit, because so many of us would prefer the warm blanket than to actually respond to needs. And if we're going to move forward in this day and age, we're going to need some of that. I went to a mechanic some years ago. I had a car that loved the mechanic shop. And one person looked at it. I think it was that car. The mechanic actually looked at it and said, "You know what your car is?" Guess what? He sold it to me. And he said, "That car is a devil in hell." And I thought, if you, the seller, call it that, I wonder what I, the buyer, should call it. But I remember one day I went into a mechanic shop and I'm not even sure what happened. I did not do my calculation or anything. I just went in, and then I said to him that I have this muffler, this donut thing, I don't know what it's called, associated with the muffler that needed replacement. As he was working on it, then all of a sudden brilliance just came to my mind. And the thought is, do you have money to pay for it? I don't even know where my brain was leading up to that. Do you have money to pay for it? And then instantly I got nervous, but he had already started working on the car. And we had just started out like early ministry. And as he started working on the car, the devil came to my mind and said, "You are going to be an utter embarrassment to really, you know, when you're going to you're going to be embarrassed so badly." I'm thinking to myself, I'm checking my pocket, and I said, "I have $70. And I said, "Why did I bring the car here? Why didn't I go to Jojo down the street?" But I went to Midas. And I sat there, and I'm trying to stay as calm as possible. As I was sitting there calmly, the man came in, and then he said, "So, what do you do in life? And I thought to myself, here goes the worst case scenario now. Preacher can't pay for his car stolen, embarrassed, and sent home. This God fanatic. And I said, well, I am a preacher. And he said, okay, that's interesting. He said, my wife attends church, but I do not. But I think church is good. And he went back inside, and then the voice started coming stronger and said, you are done now. You're such an embarrassment to your God. And then he came back again. He talked to me a little bit. He went back in. And then finally, I'm sitting there, and he came and he said, your car is ready. And then I took the manly, bold step to say, okay, thank you so much, and how much, with all the nervousness on the inside, and how much do I owe? And he looked at me and he said, nothing. I said, this is not JoJo's station, this is Midas. People don't do that in Midas. I said, what do you mean I do? He said, what you're doing for society is so good. And it's on me. Do not pay. I walked out of that place, and instead of humiliation, I went out with a testimony of the awesomeness of my God. There are biblical examples of how God can intervene and show himself strong. As Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in terms of the difficulty they were facing, God came in and God intervened in their lives when they were called, when everything went against them in the political arena. God was able to come by and to pave the way so these three individuals would not suffer death. Instead, they were able to triumph. There are other examples. Remember Daniel in the lion's den and so many other deliverance that God took place, that God was able to intervene. But what about those other times when Christians suffer? Those moments when it's not the result of sin or even bad decisions, because we know there are consequences and repercussions for bad decisions. And we need to understand that Christians or non-Christians, we're not immune. But what about those times when it's just not, it's not sin, I just don't know what's going on? What about those times when it's not like I went out there and I decided to get a new credit card and see it as new, cash, instant cash and all of that, and just, go out there and just spend it all off, and here I am, sitting here in a thing in debt. What about those moments when you can't help but say, why? Times when you stand at the grave of a loved one who died an untimely death, or you're sitting there at the ash remain of a broken marriage, or you're walking through the valley of failure, even though you honestly felt that you probably gave it, in your own estimate, probably your best shot. You thought you said the right thing. You thought you did the right thing. Kind of like the gentleman we talked about last week, Joseph, when we were looking at the big picture. And somehow, here I am at this point in my life. Like, what's going on here? Pondering a child in which so much was invested in, and who is now your greatest dread or nightmare in life. They said the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but man, this one did not even fall. It fell and it rolled off the cliff. You say, what happened there? What about those moments when literally thousands of people are calling out to God from the east and the west, from every continent, people from every station, and they're calling out to God in unity with tear-filled eyes and broken hearts, and asking the unending question, God, why? God, why? God, why? Sometimes. I want to say something, first of all. I didn't come here as an ambassador of God. I didn't come here as Michael, or better yet, Gabriel, who comes and who is able to diagnose the mind of God and to bring forth the truth of God in ways that, well, even when Gabriel gives message, you still scratch your head like Mary and said, what? Say what? But in answering this question, it must be noted that there are really no easy answer, and not everything in life is answerable. We also need to understand that that when it comes to life, life isn't fear. How many of you, then again, how do we define fear either? Life isn't fear. As a matter of fact, I was listening to Jesus as it relates to the ointment that came to him, and Jesus said, hey, do not stop her. As far as giving it to the poor, she is looking and she is basically acknowledging my death. And Jesus said, the poor you'll always have with you. Again, I was listening in Deuteronomy earlier this morning as in the scriptures, and again God was telling them how to be kind to the strangers, and not just the strangers, but to be kind to those who are poor and things like that. Watch the kind of decisions you make when it comes to people. And he said again, the poor will always be with you. So God did not give a global solution as it relates to, no one ever being poor. Of course, there are consequences, because even if you balance the world's economy and give every single person equal division of wealth today, you know what will happen? Some people will go buy Nike, Reebok, and all of those things, and they lose it instantly. And then guess what? Somebody will go down the street and open a Nike store. And guess what? The one who opened the Nike store will get all the wealth, and all the ones who buy the Nike, as soon as they finish running and jumping, they're poor again. And so it is a continuous cycle as it relates to, so poorness is unfortunately, it is a permanent thing, including in the Christian setting, because Christians do waste resources too. But in answering the question, how do we address this whole issue? God, why? When the question would ask us, if God be for us, why this? First of all, I'd like to say one thing, and sometimes our point number one is that trials mature us. Did you know that? Yes. Trials mature us. Some of us, we believe that we should never face any pain in life, and pain can be a difficult thing. But did you know that pain also has advantages? Pain brings an awakening. For example, if you should touch, there was an individual who had no sense of feeling, could not feel pain, would get up and he would cut his leg and bleed and all sort of things, and not feeling any pain. And in the process of that, this person was an incredible danger to himself, because he did not have the ability to feel pain. Pain is a wake-up call for us in different ways. As a matter of fact, pain is good for us sometimes, because pain keeps us out of danger. You touch a hot stove, you feel the pain of it, and you move so rapidly. And so pain itself is a part of life. But trials mature us, the first thing here. In Romans chapter 5, verses 3 and 4, it talks about tribulation, that tribulation or trying works patience in you. As you go through trying moments, it develops patience in you. Did you know that you will never develop patience without some sort of trial? If you say, God, give me patience, then the next day you go to the bank, God is going to make sure the line comes right to the door. And you get utterly upset. What's going on here? God says, you wanted patience. Here is your chance. God, give me patience. 401, you hear all 16 lanes, something just happened there. An oil tanker just spilled and the highway is blocked. Now, when all 16 lanes are open, the 401 can be challenging, anywhere between 1 and probably 7, 8 in the night. But man, when that thing is shut down, all of a sudden, you just come to a screeching halt. We learn patience. Tribulation works patience. And as you learn patience in life, patience then give you experience, because you start to look to say, I've been through enough to know that he is enough. He has come through too many times. That put my mind at ease. In other words, when another trial comes, you're saying, I serve a God who did it before, and if he did it then, he will do it again. Tribulation, trying, work patience. Patience, work experience. And then guess what experience gives you? It's hope. Anywhere you find yourself, doesn't matter how deep, doesn't matter how dark, you can look and you say to yourself, people say, why are you hopeful? I tell you what, I've been through a lot of tribulation. My tribulation itself developed all kinds of patience in me and a calm assurance in God. And that calm assurance gives me a resume of experience. And I'm telling you today that God will come. I'm a hopeful person because God did it before. And for us to effectively accomplish God's will, it is necessary for us to experience certain trials. Because these trials are going to mature us. It also not only matures us, but it helps us to relate to those facing dilemma. Those facing dilemma. All of a sudden, it gives you a dimension now that you're able to relate and to be more effective in terms of addressing the issues of life. And guess what? You have a little bit more compassion. You're able to relate a bit more because you realize that, hey, look, if you have a bad attitude, buddy, you're out in the cold. You're going to sleep in the, where did they put you guys when you misbehave? They put you in the doghouse. They put you you sleep in the car because you don't want to call your friends for them to know that they're sleeping. And then you get cheat and you lie on the bed because you don't want the kids to know that, there's fireworks going on inside there. You're able to relate and you have more compassion. You're more mature, you're more rounded, you're more effective to get the job done because the trials, even though they are unfair, they play a vital part in terms of your holistic development. And how many of you today, when you look back at life and see the trying moments, how many of you look at those trying moments, but in the midst of all of that, it was painful, it hurt a lot. There was a lot of things to consume you, and you went through those dark, cold nights and all of that, but you trusted God in the midst of it, and now you're wiser, now you're stronger, now you're bolder, now you have more confidence in God. Now you're not fickle and emotional and up and down, but you know that this too shall pass in Jesus' name because your trust is anchored in God. Trials, they mature you. Another thing you have to keep in mind is that God oftentimes works with a long-term goal in mind. We said that last week. Remember with Joseph? God works with a long-term goal in mind. God comes on the scene, and for us, we're going along the highway of life, and we're like, your car light going there in the night. All you can see is as far as the light beams will reveal. But guess what? God sees the entire path. And so sometimes you say, God, why did I get a flat tire here? Of all places, a flat tire. You know what? Sometimes that's an alternative to something that would have been so much worse. Occasionally I'm on the highway and I say, why did I exit here? I just lost 2 minutes. And then a check-in would take place in my spirit. You didn't plan this, but it happened. Get with the program. I was coming on the highway and then I exited at the wrong spot too early. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, come on, that's 5 minutes I'm going to lose and all of that. And as soon as I exited off another highway and starting to find another way home, I saw this lady along the roadside basically help me. I pulled over and then she said to me, thank you so much for coming. The person said, I was here and my car broke down. And I started praying. I started saying, God, please send someone my way. And here I am thinking about my 5 minutes I'm losing. Please send someone my way. And then out of nowhere you came. I said to the person, you're a believer? The person said, yes, I am. I'm a Christian. And I was just praying to God. And you're a Christian too? Yes, I'm one too. And we meet there and we started, ladies, sometimes the problem is so minor, but for them it's a world has just come to a whatever end, and you just help her, and right there you're like a hero in a story. But you don't know what God is doing. Yes, I did miss the exit. That was not my plan. My plan was the next one. And I was grumpy a little bit saying, why did I miss this? I just lost 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden the voice of God is like, look, sometimes just simmer like a beamer and just work with the program. God has a long-term goal in mind. Consider Joseph again, as we said. The scripture is that all things work together for good to them who love God. In other words, the good things, the bad things, and the in-between things, they all work together for good. And let me tell you something. If you live long enough in this life, every single one of us will face bad things. Every single one of us will face things that we cannot answer. Every single one of us will find ourselves in some lonely Gethsemane. Every single one of us will find ourselves at a place of saying, what's going on here? Why is this going on? Why am I on the bed of infirmity? Why am I suffering this horrendous loss? Why is it that I give hope to people and in the midst of it, look at my reality? You will always face those kind of things. You will see others promoted while you are probably demoted or at the same place of stagnancy, and you'll ask yourself, why? Life is not fair. But if you hang on long enough, if you do not get bitter but get better, if you trust God and lay hold on His promises and be faithful to the things of God, I want to say to you that as David said, I have been young and I have been old. I was there as a youth when I was there guarding, my father's sheep. And here I am as the king of Israel. I've been young and I've been old, but I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed begging bread. And I need you to understand that. You may go through challenging times, or you will. You sit there and you scratch your head and you say, I was such a prospect. I was in that place where so much was required or expected of me. I expected so much more out of life. And look at it. Look where I am today. I want to say to you today, do not let bitterness come on the inside. Because once bitterness consumes you, it becomes like this infectious disease that's in your blood. It runs through every part of your body. And the end result can just be devastating. You lose your soul. You lose your purpose. You don't even remember who you are anymore. The prospect that was in you end up withering and dying. I'm telling you that do not use this moment as a moment to fall apart, but use this moment to dig deep. Use this moment to find strength and to recognize that it all worked together for good. God has a long-term plan, and sometimes you may not agree with it. You may not like what's going on. The reality and the imminence of the present occurrences can blind you to that. Don't ever lose focus. Don't ever lose focus. I can't be long on this one. The next one is that sometimes there are behind the scene spiritual reasons that you don't understand. In the case of Job, Job was going through loss after loss after loss. It was just a horrible reality that day after day, a new revelation of horrible experiences. Yesterday it was that, today it was that. All of his friends look at it and they say, man, I've never seen anything like that. God is angry with you, Job. But little did Job know, or his friend, little did they know that behind the scene, there were principalities and powers wrestling to bring about a theological, a statement or occurrence that would be able to guide people for the next thousands of years when it comes to the plan of God. The devil said, you bless him, and in blessing, anybody would serve you. If there was a guarantee that you would all be millionaires, how many of you would serve God? Why not? Yeah. If there was a guarantee that every job you go on, you will become the president, the CEO, the controller, the chief financial officer, the chief, director of operation, or whatever the case may be. If there was a guarantee, of course we would all run for it.
Thank you for joining us at The Rock. I hope you've been encouraged and strengthened to stand on the Word of God. We look forward to seeing you again. You can visit us on Sunday mornings and Wednesdays and find more information about us on our website, Facebook, and YouTube channel. We'll see you again at The Rock.